You have too many interests? Here's why that's actually an advantage. Have you ever felt like you're interested in too many things? Maybe one day you're learning about business, the next day you're watching videos about psychology, and a week later you're obsessed with photography, coding, history, or fitness. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this annoying voice saying, "Why can't I just pick one thing and stick with it?" If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to talk about why having many interests isn't a weakness, why traditional career advice doesn't work for everyone, and how you can turn your curiosity into one of your biggest advantages. Let's get into it. Most people believe success comes from specializing in one thing. Pick a career, choose a lane, go all in, become an expert. For a long time, that advice made perfect sense. The world was more predictable. Careers were more stable. People often spent decades doing the same type of work. The deeper you went into a single skill, the more valuable you became. This created what we can call the I-shaped professional. Imagine the letter I, one long vertical line. That line represents deep expertise in one area. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, and many other professionals often follow this path. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Specialists are incredibly valuable. But here's the problem. Not everyone is wired that way. Some people naturally want to explore multiple areas. They don't have one passion, they have 10. And when these people hear the advice to just focus on one thing, they often feel broken. They start thinking they lack discipline. They think they're distracted. Or worse, they believe they'll never be successful because they can't settle on a single path. But what if that's not true? What if your brain simply works differently? The real struggle for many curious people isn't laziness, it's choice. You look around and see so many possibilities. Every option feels exciting. Every path feels meaningful. And because every choice means giving up other possibilities, you end up stuck. Not because you don't want to work, but because you don't know which direction to commit to. This is something many people experience. You want to do everything, and because of that, you sometimes end up doing nothing. The good news is that there may be a better way to think about your career. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who can't focus, think of yourself as someone who connects different worlds. Let's talk about different career shapes. We've already mentioned the I-shaped person. That's the specialist. But there's another shape that causes a lot of problems. The dash-shaped person. Someone who knows a little bit about everything, but never develops real depth anywhere. A little marketing, a little coding, a little design, a little psychology, a little finance, but not enough expertise to create real value. This is where many curious people accidentally end up. And it's frustrating because you feel busy all the time, but progress feels slow. You know many things, but you don't feel confident in any of them. Fortunately, there's another option, and this is where things get interesting. Imagine the letter M. Instead of having one area of expertise, you have 2 or 3 strong pillars. Deep knowledge in multiple areas. That's what we call an M-shaped professional. For example, maybe you're highly skilled in data analysis. That's one pillar. At the same time, you've developed strong communication and storytelling skills. That's another pillar. Now you can do something most people can't. You can take complicated information and explain it in a way people actually understand. Suddenly, you're not competing with every data analyst, you're offering a unique combination of skills. And that's where real value is created. The magic doesn't come from knowing many things. The magic comes from combining them. One of the biggest advantages of having multiple interests is something called FAR transfer. Don't worry about the fancy name. The idea is simple. Most people solve problems using knowledge from the same field. A marketer looks at marketing problems. An engineer looks at engineering problems. A designer looks at design problems. But people with diverse interests often do something different. They borrow ideas from one field and apply them somewhere completely different. That's where innovation often happens. Maybe you learn something from architecture and apply it to website design. Maybe a musician sees patterns that help them become a better programmer. Maybe someone interested in psychology becomes a better salesperson because they understand human behavior. The more knowledge you collect from different areas, the larger your toolbox becomes. And sometimes the solution to a problem isn't found inside the field itself. It's found somewhere completely unrelated. That's why many successful innovators are curious about far more than just their main profession. Now the question becomes, how do you actually build a career around this? The answer is not trying to master everything at once. That's a recipe for overwhelm. Instead, focus on something called serial mastery. In simple terms, learn deeply one thing at a time. Choose one area and commit to it for a season of your life. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe longer. The key is giving yourself permission to focus, not forever, just for now. This is where many people get stuck. They think choosing one thing means choosing it for life. But that's not true. You're simply deciding where your attention goes today. That's a much less scary decision. Build one skill until you're genuinely competent. You don't need to become the best in the world. You just need to become good enough that you can confidently solve real problems. Once you've built that foundation, you can begin developing another pillar. Over time, those pillars start working together, and that's when things become powerful. There's another strategy that many people overlook, and it might sound strange at first. Sometimes your job doesn't need to be your greatest passion. Sometimes your job's purpose is stability. Think about it. If you're naturally curious, you need mental energy for exploration. A job that completely drains you can make that difficult. You come home exhausted, your curiosity disappears, your side projects die, your learning stops. In some cases, a stable, lower-stress job can actually be a strategic advantage. It gives you the time, energy, and resources to develop other interests. Instead of seeing your job as a prison, you can view it as the platform that supports everything else you're building. That's a mindset shift many people need. Not every job has to fulfill every dream. Sometimes its role is simply to create the freedom to pursue those dreams. Now, let's talk about one final piece of the puzzle: your ideas. If you're someone with many interests, you probably have a brain full of random thoughts. New business ideas, book ideas, project ideas, things you want to learn, things you don't want to forget. The problem is that your brain is not designed to store all of that information. Trying to remember everything creates stress. That's why you need an external system, a place where ideas can live safely outside your head. This can be a notebook, a note-taking app, a digital journal, anything that works for you. Whenever something catches your attention, write it down. Capture the idea, save the insight, store the resource. Then let it go. You don't need to act on every idea immediately. What's amazing is that months or even years later, you may revisit an old note and suddenly discover a connection you never noticed before. That's where creativity often comes from, connecting dots that were collected at different points in your life. But you can only connect those dots if you save them first. So what have we learned today? If you have many interests, that doesn't automatically mean you're unfocused. It doesn't mean you're lazy, and it definitely doesn't mean you're destined to fail. You may simply be someone who thrives by combining knowledge from different fields. The goal isn't to learn everything at once. The goal is to build depth one pillar at a time. Focus on one skill long enough to become competent, then build another. Use your job as a foundation rather than a cage, and create a system that captures your endless stream of ideas. Over time, those different interests won't compete with each other. They'll start working together. And that's when your unique value really begins to emerge. If you think this video is a good one, send it to that guy who always thinks a little differently. And for more content on personal growth, learning, productivity, and building a meaningful career, subscribe to my channel. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one interest you've always wanted to explore but haven't fully committed to yet? Drop it below in the comments.